Agatha had always been a bit of an oddity in the village. She lived alone in a small cottage at the edge of town, and no one knew much about her other than the fact that she was a recluse who rarely ventured out in public. Her appearance was that of an old woman, with deeply wrinkled skin, wispy gray hair, and a hunchback that made her seem even smaller than she already was. Despite her oddness, the villagers never suspected that Agatha could be capable of the horrors that were to come. It all began one dark and stormy night when a weary traveler stumbled into town seeking shelter from the rain. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a thick beard and a warm smile. He introduced himself as John, a merchant on his way to the next town over. Agatha met John at the edge of town, just as he was about to give up hope of finding a place to stay for the night. She beckoned him to follow her to her cottage, assuring him that she had a warm fire and a hot meal waiting. John was grateful for the invitation and eagerly followed Agatha down the winding path that led to her home. When they arrived, Agatha welcomed John with open arms, offering him a seat by the fire and a hot bowl of stew. The warmth of the cottage and the smell of the food were a welcome relief from the cold and dampness outside, and John soon found himself relaxing in Agatha's company. Agatha was a gracious host, and she regaled John with tales of her youth and the adventures she had had in her long life. But as the night wore on, John began to notice that something was not quite right about the old woman. Her stories took on a sinister tone, and her eyes seemed to glint with an unnatural gleam in the firelight. Just as John was about to make his excuses and leave, Agatha offered him a tour of her home. She led him through the small cottage, showing him the various rooms and trinkets that she had collected over the years. But as they reached the end of the tour, Agatha revealed a secret door that led to a dark and foreboding room. "Come, John," she said, beckoning him to follow her inside. "I have something to show you." Despite the creeping sense of dread that was gnawing at his insides, John followed Agatha into the room, and that's when he saw it. A collection of weapons and torture devices, each one more gruesome than the last. Agatha turned to face John, her eyes now blazing with a manic intensity. "Welcome to my playroom," she said, brandishing a large, rusty knife. "You're going to be my next victim." John's heart raced as he took a step back from Agatha, feeling the cold metal of the torture devices brush against his back. He could barely believe what he was seeing. This gentle, grandmotherly figure was a twisted sadist who had planned his death all along. He made a desperate dash for the door, but Agatha was quick and agile, blocking his path with a well-placed swing of the knife. The weapon glinted menacingly in the dim light of the room, and John knew he had no chance of overpowering her. Agatha chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent shivers down John's spine. "You're not going anywhere, my dear," she said, advancing on him with the knife. You're mine to play with now." John backed away until he was pressed up against the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. He could see the glint of madness in Agatha's eyes, and he knew he had to do something, anything, to get out of this alive. As Agatha closed in on him, John took a deep breath and lunged at her with all his might. His shoulder connected with her frail body, and they both tumbled to the ground. The knife clattered out of Agatha's hand as she hit the floor, and John scrambled to his feet, darting towards the door. He could hear Agatha's anguished cries behind him, but he didn't look back. He knew that he had to get out of there before she regained her senses and came after him again. John stumbled out of the cottage and into the stormy night, gasping for breath. He didn't stop running until he was far away from the cottage, his heart pounding in his chest. It wasn't until he had put several miles between himself and Agatha's home that he finally stopped, his legs trembling with exhaustion. He knew that he had narrowly escaped death that night, and he vowed never to venture near that cottage again.